I never imagined a single night could flip my entire world upside down. It started so innocently, a Friday afternoon, golden sunlight pouring through the dining room window, and my daughter-in-law, Emily, standing there with that charming smile she always used when she wanted something. Mom, she said, she's been calling me that since she married my son, Michael. I have this charity gala tonight. Everyone's going to be dressed to the nines, and, well, you have the most amazing jewelry collection. Could I maybe borrow one of your rings? At first, I laughed it off. I knew Emily loved dressing up, and honestly, I'd always found it sweet when she admired my things. But then she walked over to my display case, the one I kept locked in my bedroom, and her eyes locked on it. The ring. The $3 million emerald cut diamond my late husband, Richard, gave me on our 25th anniversary. A masterpiece of pure ice and light. Not that one, sweetheart, I said quickly, almost too sharply. That one's special. She gave me a little pout. Oh, come on, Mom, I'll be so careful. Just for tonight. It would go perfectly with my gown. Please. I hesitated. I don't know if it was guilt, affection, or just the way she said, please, but I gave in. I unlocked the case, my fingers trembling slightly as I placed the ring in her palm. Emily, I warned, you understand that this ring is insured for $3 million. It's irreplaceable. She nodded, her eyes gleaming almost as much as the diamond itself. Of course. I'll have it back to you first thing tomorrow. I watched her leave, feeling uneasy but trying to brush it off. After all, what could go wrong in one night? Turns out, everything. That was the last time I saw the ring, and the beginning of the biggest nightmare of my life. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I couldn't shake the anxious feeling that had been gnawing at me all night. I must have checked my phone a dozen times, half expecting a text from Emily saying, "Got home safe. Ring's perfect, thank you." But there was nothing. By 9 a.m., I decided to call her. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. Then I texted. Greater than, morning, dear. Hope the gala went well. Can you drop by today with the ring? I'd like to put it back in the safe. No response. At 10:30, I called my son, Michael. Hey, honey, I said, trying to sound casual. Did Emily get home okay last night? There was a pause on the other end. She came home late, he finally said. I was already asleep. Why? My heart started to race. Because she borrowed my diamond ring last night, the big one. I asked her to bring it back this morning. Michael sighed. Mom, I didn't even know she took it. I'll ask her. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Michael again, but his tone had changed completely. Mom, Emily says she doesn't have the ring. I froze. What do you mean she doesn't have it? She said she put it in her clutch after the party, but when she got home, it wasn't there. She thinks, maybe it fell out. Fell out. A $3 million diamond ring just fell out. I could feel my blood pressure rising. Tell her I want to speak to her. Now. A moment later, Emily's shaky voice came through the line. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know what happened. I swear I didn't lose it on purpose. I checked the car, the ballroom, everywhere. I cut her off. Did you report it to the event organizers? The police. I didn't want to make a scene, she said, her voice trembling. I thought maybe I'd just misplaced it. That was when something in my gut told me there was more to this story. Something she wasn't saying. Because later that afternoon, I'd learn what really happened at that gala, and it would make my stomach turn. By the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove straight to Emily and Michael's house, my heart pounding the entire way. Emily opened the door looking pale, her hair still curled from the night before but her eyes swollen from crying. Mom, I'm so sorry, she said, almost whispering. I've turned this house upside down. I don't know how it happened. I stepped inside, scanning her living room. Clutches, shoes, makeup bags, everything was spread across the coffee table. But no ring. Start from the beginning, I said firmly. Tell me everything about last night. Every detail. She took a deep breath. We arrived at the gala around 7. It was at the Carlton Regency downtown. A lot of people were there, celebrities, investors, even a few politicians. I wanted to look my best. I remember showing the ring to a few people at our table. I interrupted. You showed it off. Her face flushed. Not like that. They noticed it. They asked about it, and I said it was yours. Everyone was amazed. My stomach tightened. Flashing a $3 million diamond in a crowded ballroom full of strangers. That was reckless. Then what happened? I asked. She hesitated. There was champagne, dancing, and at one point, a tall man in a dark gray suit, came up and complimented the ring. He said he was a jeweler, that he'd never seen a diamond that clear in his life. A jeweler, I repeated slowly. Yes. He asked to look at it up close. He seemed professional, so I took it off for a moment. He held it, examined it under the light, and then, her voice trailed off. And then, he handed it back. At least I thought he did. I remember putting it in my clutch right after. But when I got home, it was gone. I finished for her. I stared at her, disbelief and fury mixing in my chest. Emily, do you even know who that man was? She shook her head helplessly. No, he said his name was Victor something. He gave me a card, but I can't find it anymore. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. Everything about her story felt off. A stranger, a fake jeweler, a vanished ring. Before I could even process it, my phone buzzed again. It was Michael, texting from work. Greater than, Mom, don't panic. I just got a call from our bank. Someone tried to appraise a ring this morning that sounds just like yours. I looked at Emily, my hands trembling. Emily, I said slowly, what if your ring didn't just fall out? What if it was stolen, right off your hand? The moment I read Michael's text, everything inside me turned cold. Someone had already tried to appraise my ring. That meant it hadn't been lost, it had been taken. I looked at Emily, who was sitting on the couch with her hands shaking. Emily, this isn't a coincidence. Whoever that man was, he knew exactly what he was doing. Her face went white. Oh my God, do you think he swapped it? That when he handed it back. I didn't let her finish. I already knew the answer. By noon, we were at the local police department, sitting across from a detective named Sergeant Lewis. He was calm, methodical, and had the kind of expression that told me he'd seen this sort of thing before. Mrs. Callahan, he said, flipping through his notes, so the ring in question is valued at approximately $3 million, correct? Yes, I replied. It's an Assure-cut diamond, 20 carats, platinum band, with my husband's initials engraved inside. Emily sat beside me, avoiding eye contact. Sergeant Lewis nodded slowly. And you said a man at the gala identified himself as a jeweler named Victor. That's what he told her, I said sharply. She claims he gave her a business card, but it's conveniently missing. Emily's voice cracked. I swear I didn't mean for this to happen. He seemed so genuine. Lewis leaned forward. Mrs. Callahan, this isn't the first time we've heard that name. There's been a string of high-profile jewelry thefts at social events across the city, always involving a man calling himself Victor. He uses aliases, blends in, and targets people wearing expensive pieces. He's good. My heart sank. Lewis continued, we'll need photos from the event, any surveillance, social media posts, anything that shows this man or the ring. Emily hesitated, then pulled out her phone. There were photographers everywhere. Maybe someone tagged me. She opened her Instagram, scrolling through photos from the night before, glittering chandeliers, champagne glasses, gowns, and then froze. There, she whispered. That's him. On the edge of a group photo, half in the shadows, stood a tall man in a charcoal gray suit. Sharp jawline, slicked back hair, a smirk that sent a chill down my spine. Lewis zoomed in on the image. That's our guy, Victor Hale, real name unknown. International jewelry thief. He's been on Interpol's radar for 2 years. Emily covered her mouth in horror. I can't believe this is happening. But I wasn't listening anymore. I could only stare at the faint sparkle on her hand in that photo, my ring. And if what Lewis said was true, that man had stolen from more than just me. He had a pattern. And he wasn't finished yet. By the next morning, the investigation was in full swing. Sergeant Lewis had assigned 2 detectives to our case and contacted Interpol directly. The moment the photo of Victor Hale hit their database, alarms went off. Apparently, this man had been involved in jewelry heists across 3 countries. But the part that chilled me to the bone was how personal it all suddenly felt. When I arrived at the station to follow up, Lewis motioned me into a small room where he already had a timeline mapped on a whiteboard. There were photos from the gala, social media posts, and a string of newspaper clippings from other thefts, Milan, London, New York. Mrs. Callahan, he said, pointing to a photo from 2 weeks earlier, this was taken at a fundraiser in Miami. Same man, different alias. The woman in this picture reported a missing Cartier necklace valued at $1.2 million. He got close to her at the event, claimed to be an appraiser. I stared at the image, same man, same suit, same confident smile. Emily sat beside me, silent, pale as paper. Then Louis dropped a bombshell. Your daughter-in-law didn't meet him by accident. Emily's head snapped up. What do you mean? Louis leaned forward. According to witness statements from the gala, this man, Victor, approached you before the event started. He seemed to know who you were, Emily. He called you by name. Her voice wavered. He did, but I thought he just saw my name on the guest list. I turned to her sharply. Emily, you didn't think to tell me that. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't realize it meant anything. He said he'd seen my charity work online, that he admired my fashion sense. Louis cut in. That's how he picks his marks. Social media, public profiles. He researches women who attend high-end events and identifies which ones might have access to valuable jewelry. He knew about your mother-in-law's collection before you even spoke to him. I felt my knees go weak. You mean, he targeted us? Louis nodded grimly. Exactly. And we think he had help. Help, I repeated. He handed me a printed email, an RSVP confirmation from the gala organizers. The sender's name caught my eye, Clara Morgan, the assistant event coordinator. Louis tapped her name. She was the one who sent out the invitations, including Emily's. But here's the twist. Clara Morgan doesn't exist. It's a fake identity. We traced the IP address used to send those emails, same as one linked to Victor Hale's previous thefts. Emily gasped. So the whole thing was a setup. Louis nodded. From start to finish. Silence filled the room. My mind was spinning. The gala, the compliments, the fake jeweler, it had all been orchestrated. And then Louis looked at me seriously. Mrs. Callahan, you need to be prepared for something else. I swallowed hard. What? He sighed. We believe this man isn't done. We found flight records, he hasn't left the city. Which means he might be planning to sell that ring right here, within the next 48 hours. My pulse quickened. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't just scared, I was angry. He had stolen from my family. And if he was still in this city, I was going to make sure he didn't get away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man's smirk, the way he'd slipped through our lives like smoke, charming everyone, and walking away with something priceless. Not just my ring, but my peace. By morning, I was at the police station again. Sergeant Louis looked exhausted, but determined. We've got a lead, he said. A contact in the black market jewelry scene confirmed a meeting, tonight, downtown. A buyer's coming in to see a rare 20-carat Assure-cut diamond. Sounds like your ring. My stomach flipped. Where? A private auction house on the lower side of the city. It's supposed to look legitimate, but they've been known to broker stolen pieces quietly. We're setting up a sting. Emily and Michael had come with me. My son looked tense, jaw clenched, his hand gripping Emily's shoulder. She looked fragile, like the guilt had aged her overnight. Louis continued, we'll send in an undercover officer as the buyer. If Victor shows, we'll move in before the transaction's completed. I nodded, but something about all of it felt too easy. Victor wasn't a fool. He'd orchestrated international heists, he'd know when he was being watched. Still, by 9 p.m., I was sitting in an unmarked police van, parked a block away from the auction house. Through a crack in the window, I could see the old brick building glowing under the yellow streetlights. Buyers in position, a voice crackled over the radio. No visual on the suspect yet. Minutes crawled by. My nerves were electric. Then, through the van's front window, I saw a dark SUV pull up. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing that same charcoal gray suit. Victor. He walked inside calmly, carrying a sleek black case. My chest tightened. My ring was in there. Units, hold positions, Louis ordered. We move when he opens the case. Inside, the undercover officer, posing as a wealthy collector, greeted Victor and asked to see the item. Through the surveillance feed, we all leaned closer as Victor clicked open the black case. And there it was. My diamond ring, glinting under the harsh fluorescent light, looking as perfect as the day Richard slipped it on my finger. All right, Louis whispered, on my mark. But before he could give the signal, a second figure appeared on the screen. A woman. She was wearing a hood, but when she turned her head slightly toward the camera, my blood ran cold. It was Emily. I couldn't breathe. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that building. Louis looked at me sharply. What the hell? She wasn't cleared for this operation. I stared at the monitor, my voice trembling. What is she doing there? On the screen, Emily walked up to Victor, speaking quickly, nervously. He smiled faintly and said something we couldn't hear. Then he placed a hand on her shoulder. That's when Louis shouted into the radio, move. Move in now. Officers burst into the building. The feed went chaotic, shouts, footsteps, the sound of a struggle. A moment later, static. Then silence. Louis turned to me. Stay here. I didn't. I ran. By the time I reached the building, flashing red and blue lights painted the street. Officers were shouting, restraining people, and as I pushed through the chaos, I saw her, Emily, being led out in handcuffs. And Victor. Gone. The case, the ring, the man, vanished into the night. The air outside the auction house felt heavy, filled with police sirens, shouts, and disbelief. I stood frozen as I watched my daughter-in-law, the same woman I'd once called family, being pushed into the back of a police car. Emily, I shouted, my voice cracking. What did you do? She turned her head toward me, eyes wide, tear-streaked, trembling. I didn't mean for it to happen. Mom, I swear, I didn't. But it was too late. Sergeant Lewis rushed toward me, his expression grim. Mrs. Callahan, we have to talk, now. Inside the command van, the monitors flickered with grainy footage from the sting. Lewis replayed the moment Emily entered the building. We ran her phone data, Mrs. Callahan. She's been in contact with Victor for over a week. I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. That's impossible, I whispered. She said she met him once, at the gala. Lewis shook his head. We found encrypted messages between them. He convinced her he was an investor, someone who could help her fund her charity projects. He told her he needed her to borrow a high-value piece to prove her connections to wealthy donors. She believed him. My hands clenched. You mean she helped him steal from me? Lewis sighed. At first, maybe she didn't know what she was doing. But the messages changed tone a few days later. He started giving her instructions, specific ones. What to wear, when to meet, where to bring the ring. She was being manipulated. I felt sick. She still lied to all of us. She did, he admitted. But it gets worse. He turned the monitor again. The audio from the sting came through, faint but clear. Emily's voice, shaky. Greater than, please, Victor, just let me explain, they're watching. You said no one would get hurt. Then Victor's calm reply. Greater than, you shouldn't have panicked, sweetheart. Now you've made it messy. The next sound was the door bursting open, the raid. Lewis paused the video. When she showed up tonight, she wasn't there to help him. She came to warn him. I blinked, confused. Warn him. Why? Because she realized too late what he really was. She tried to stop him before we caught him, thinking she could convince him to turn himself in. My voice trembled. And the ring? Lewis grimaced. Gone. He grabbed the case in the chaos and slipped out a side exit. We're reviewing street cams now. I leaned back, shaking, unable to process everything. Emily wasn't innocent. But she wasn't the cold, calculating thief I'd thought she was either. She was naive, reckless, and she'd fallen for a professional con man. A few minutes later, as they brought her back inside, I saw her up close. Her wrists were cuffed, her face pale, eyes full of regret. Mom, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I didn't know he was using me. I thought he loved me. The words hit like a hammer. Loved her. My heart cracked, not for the ring this time, but for the sheer ruin of it all. Lewis placed a hand on my shoulder. We'll find him. He's still in the city. But I need to be honest with you, this guy is smart, connected, and ruthless. He's not going to stop. And as Emily was led away to be booked for aiding in a theft she didn't fully understand, I made a silent promise to myself. If the police couldn't find Victor Hale, I would. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of anger, exhaustion, and disbelief. Emily was being held on suspicion of aiding a grand theft, but Lewis had promised she wouldn't be charged formally unless solid evidence tied her to the actual sale. Still, my son, Michael, was devastated. He hadn't spoken much since the arrest. When I stopped by their house to bring him food, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone, his eyes red. She said she didn't love him, he muttered quietly. She said it was just manipulation. But, Mom, I read the messages. I hesitated. What messages? He turned his phone around. On the screen were screenshots the police had shared with him, texts between Emily and Victor. At first, they were polite, formal, talk about her charity, his supposed investment offers. But then, the tone changed, intimate. Compliments. Late-night messages. Heart emojis. And then one that made my blood run cold. Greater than, you said your mother-in-law has one of the rarest stones in the state. A piece like that could change our lives. Michael's voice cracked. She told him about your ring, Mom. Before the gala. Before she even asked you to borrow it. I sank into the chair across from him, feeling my chest tighten. So it was all part of the plan from the beginning. He shook his head weakly. I don't know anymore. She says he promised to buy it legitimately, that he said he wanted to surprise you, to help her prove she could handle big negotiations. But come on. Who believes that? I didn't have an answer. That night, I couldn't stay still. My mind kept circling back to Victor, his charm, his precision, the way he vanished. There had to be a trail. The next morning, I drove to the Carlton Regency, the hotel where the gala had been held. The manager recognized me immediately, the police had already been there, asking questions. But when I pressed harder, he finally lowered his voice. There's something the officers didn't ask about, he said quietly. 2 days before the gala, a man checked in under the name James Vaughn. He paid cash, no ID. But his face looked awfully familiar. He pulled up the security footage. It was Victor. And he wasn't alone. Standing beside him at check-in, smiling, laughing, touching his arm, was Emily. My heart dropped. The manager frowned. They looked like a couple to me. Stayed for about an hour, then checked out. I assumed they were early arrivals for the event. I left the hotel with my pulse pounding, 1,000 questions swirling in my head. Why would she meet him before the gala? Why lie about it? When I got home, Lewis was already waiting for me on the porch. Mrs. Callahan, he said, we just got something from Interpol. He handed me a folder. Inside were photos, surveillance stills from London, taken a year earlier. There was Victor, dressed sharply as ever, standing beside a woman at a high-end jewelry auction. But it wasn't Emily. It was another woman who looked just like her. Lewis pointed to the photo. That's not coincidence. He has a type, young, stylish, trusting. He seduces them, gains access to wealthy families, then disappears after the score. I felt a chill run through me. So Emily was just his next mark. Lewis nodded grimly. Yes. But she doesn't know the full truth. We believe Victor's using her as bait now, to cover his escape. Which means, he paused. He'll contact her again. I stared at him, realizing what that meant. If Victor reached out to her, we'd have one final chance, a trap he wouldn't see coming. And this time, I wouldn't let him walk away. The call came 3 nights later. It was just past midnight when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer, until I saw who was calling. Michael. His voice was tight, almost shaking. Mom, he called her. I sat straight up in bed. Victor. Yes. From a blocked number. He got through somehow, even though she's still in police custody. Within 20 minutes, I was at the precinct. Emily sat behind a glass wall in the interrogation room, pale, trembling, clutching the phone the officers had handed her. Sergeant Lewis stood beside me on the observation side, his eyes fixed on her. He used a voice scrambler at first, Lewis explained. Then turned it off. Wanted her to know it was him. We played the recording. Greater than Victor. You've caused quite the mess, sweetheart. You were supposed to keep your mouth shut. Emily, crying, please, Victor, they're blaming me for everything. Just give back the ring. Tell them the truth. Victor. A pause, then a soft laugh. Oh, I can't do that. But I can fix this, for you. Meet me tomorrow night. Same place we met before the gala. No police. No tricks. Then the line went dead. Lewis turned to me. This is our chance. We'll stage it. She'll go, but we'll control every move. Emily lifted her head, her voice barely audible. I'll do it. If it means ending this, I'll do it. The next night came too fast. The meeting point, the Carlton Regency's underground parking lot, the same place they'd first met. The plan was simple. Emily would wear a wire, the police would monitor everything, and as soon as Victor showed up with the ring, they'd move in. But my gut told me, nothing about this man was simple. At 9:45 p.m., Emily arrived. She wore a plain coat, her hair tied back. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke into the wire. I'm here. Lewis and his team were positioned in unmarked cars around the block. I sat in the van again, headphones on, heart hammering. A soft echo filled the line, footsteps approaching. Then that familiar smooth voice. Greater than, you actually came. I wasn't sure you still trusted me. Greater than, I don't, Emily said quietly. But I want this over. Please, just give me the ring. Greater than, you mean her ring, Victor said, amusement dripping from his tone. You know, it's funny, I never wanted the diamond. I wanted you. Lewis motioned for the team to hold. Wait for visual confirmation, he whispered. Through the live camera feed, we saw him step out of the shadows, same tailored suit, same cold smile. In his hand, a small velvet box. Greater than, you still don't understand, do you? He said softly. You were part of something much bigger. Greater than, what do you mean? Greater than, your mother-in-law's ring isn't just a jewel. It's a marker. That stone belonged to someone powerful, and they want it back. The line crackled. My heart stopped. Someone powerful. Then, before anyone could react, the lights in the garage flickered, and went out completely. Static filled the headset. Shouting. Footsteps. Move. Move now. Lewis barked into his radio. The team burst into the garage, flashlights slicing through the dark. But by the time the lights came back on, Emily was standing alone. Victor, and the ring, were gone. Again, Lewis slammed his fist against the table. He cut the power manually. He knew our setup. Someone tipped him off. I felt a chill wash over me as realization struck. Someone inside the operation had betrayed us. And judging by the look on Lewis' face, he already had a suspect. By dawn, the mood inside the precinct was electric, half panic, half rage. Victor had slipped through the police's fingers again, vanishing into the night like he'd rehearsed it 1,000 times. But what haunted me most wasn't his escape, it was his words. Greater than, that stone belonged to someone powerful, and they want it back. For hours, Lewis and his team scoured the footage from the parking garage. Every second, every corner, every reflection. Then, around 6 a.m., one of the tech analysts called out, "Sir, you need to see this." On one of the surveillance feeds, just before the blackout, a second man appeared. Wearing a maintenance uniform, he walked toward the electrical panel, glanced over his shoulder, and the camera caught his face for half a second. Lewis froze. "No," he muttered. "That's impossible." I leaned closer. "Who is that?" He exhaled sharply. "Detective Grant. One of ours." My stomach twisted. Grant had been there since the first day, quiet, professional, always one step behind Lewis but eager to help. He'd handled the informant calls, the wiretap setup, even escorted Emily once during questioning. Lewis' voice hardened. He fed Victor our movements. Every time. Within an hour, Grant's apartment was raided, empty. But they found something he'd left behind. A briefcase containing fake passports, unmarked cash, and a small folded note. On it, just 2 words. Greater than, it's done. And beneath it, a velvet box. My breath caught as Lewis opened it. Inside, my ring gleamed under the fluorescent light, the same perfect diamond that had started this nightmare. Lewis frowned. Why would he leave it? But as I looked closer, I saw it, faint etching along the band that hadn't been there before. New engraving. 2 initials. VH. Victor Hale. He'd marked it. Claimed it. Later that evening, Lewis briefed me on everything they'd uncovered. Grant met Victor overseas years ago, he explained. Interpol believes they were partners in high-end theft operations before Grant became a cop. He infiltrated our side to keep Victor one step ahead. I sat silently, staring at the ring in its evidence bag. After all that destruction, the lies, the betrayal, the fear, the diamond looked the same. Untouched. Cold. Emily was released 2 days later. The charges were dropped after the evidence proved she'd been manipulated. But she wasn't the same woman. Her face carried a quiet sorrow, not just from the shame, but from realizing how completely she'd been used. "I'll never forgive myself," she told me softly as she handed me a small envelope. "He sent this to me before the gala. I was too afraid to show it to anyone." Inside was a handwritten note from Victor. "Greater than, the ring isn't just money, Emily. It's history. It's power. And when I'm done, the world will finally know who it truly belonged to." No signature. Just a small sketch of a crown. Lewis took the note for analysis, but even now, months later, no one's sure what Victor meant, or where he went. Some say he escaped to Europe. Others believe he never left the country. As for me, I had the ring reset into a new band, the engraving filed away, and locked it back in my safe. I thought about selling it, but I couldn't. Not yet. Because some nights, when the house is quiet and the moonlight hits that diamond just right, it doesn't shine the same way anymore. It feels like it's watching me. And somewhere out there, I can't shake the feeling. Victor Hale is still watching too.